7:36, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Want to get right to the Newsmaker Hotline. Stephen Bucci from the Heritage Foundation joining us, military and foreign policy analyst. Stephen, always great to have you on the program. So President Trump decides that he wants to turn Gaza into some sort of a resort destination area. And a lot of reporters had a lot of questions, and this is what Caroline Levitt said about it yesterday.
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region.
All right, so, Stephen, there's a lot of ways we can go about this discussion, but just give me your quick take on this.
I like her analysis. I agree with it. I know initially when President Trump, threw this out in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the press conference, it looked like even Netanyahu was a little surprised. But this is how he works. He is the disruptor in chief. He loves coming up with ideas that no one has considered before, and he thinks like a businessman. We need to all remember that all the time. He's not a career politician or a bureaucrat. So, everything else has failed, and he's trying to get people to help. They're being reluctant. You got the Egyptians and the Saudis, who are the leaders of the Sunni world. You got the Jordanians, whose king is a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. But they're all going, Palestinians, no thanks. And I think this is a massive, diplomatic jujitsu move on his part to get these people to say, well, look, we don't want them really doing what Trump is suggesting. Let's go back and talk to them and get them to do something that we can play a part in. Because otherwise, these leaders in the region, feel like they're cut out. They look bad to their own people. They don't like that. So this could end up being a brilliant move if he can get these guys to pay for it, and they have the capability to do that. That's great. If he wants to get their people doing it, they got the people to do that. They could add that part of the labor force, and they're not going to have as big a target on their back as having either Israeli or American people there providing security. So I think the press secretary's analysis is spot on, and it doesn't sound to me like she just made that up on the fly. That sounds like after the press conference, somebody sat down with her and says, this is what we're really looking to do. Yeah, and she put it out there,
which she did. And there's a number of different, as I said, a couple of different angles. But one of them has to be okay. So she said, doing the same thing over and over again. So we rebuild Gaza. We, as in the world, rebuilds Gaza one way or another. And Hamas is still going to be there. There's still going to be wars between Hamas and Israel because Hamas simply cannot help themselves, and they're going to be attacking Israel. So it's almost like I agree with Caroline Levitt, which is, what's the point in rebuilding it again? Because it's just going to get destroyed again. So, and the other aspect of this is the Palestinians. Egypt doesn't want the Palestinians. Jordan doesn't want the Palestinians. Nobody wants the Palestinians. Can you talk a little bit about why they don't want the Palestinians?
Well, yeah, because the Palestinians are not good guests. There were a ton of Palestinians in Jordan back from earlier Arab-Israeli conflicts, and eventually they tried to kill the king, the present king's father.
Yep.
They rebelled and tried to take over the entire country of Jordan, where they were guests, and kill the king, who is a descendant of the prophet. That's really a bad thing to do in their world. And they found out that King Hussein back then, who looked like a jolly fellow with a nice smile all the time, turned out to be a pretty tough dude. He rounded them up. He crushed the revolt. He killed a bunch of them, and the rest of them he kicked out of his country. Now, they still have a very large Palestinian population. They also have a lot of Syrians that are in their country in the northern part that are refugees. The Jordanians are sort of punching above their weight with taking care of their brethren, and they don't necessarily want more. The Egyptians don't want them because Egypt has been very comfortable with its positive relationship with the Israelis for a long time. You put a whole bunch of Palestinians back inside Egyptian territory, and that's going to be harder to maintain, and those people will then start attacking the Egyptians. Bottom line is the Palestinians are far more Hamas-type orientation than we give them. I won't call it credit, but right, that we attribute to them. The folks who say, well, look, the Palestinians in Gaza are really like prisoners. The Hamas are the problem. You can't keep attacking the civilians. There are not a heck of a lot of honest-to-goodness civilians in Gaza, to be honest with you. Maybe the women and children, okay, you got a point. Yeah. But all of the military-age men, which in that part of the world is like 15 and up, they are all tied to Hamas in some way, shape, or form, ideologically or through action. Many of them have multiple jobs. They might be a hospital orderly during the day, and then at night they put on the headband, they grab a weapon, and they go off and start shooting rockets. So there is a really strong hostile thread within the Palestinians because, honest to goodness, the only thing they really want is to get every single Jewish person out of what is now Israel.
Right.
They don't care about getting humanitarian assistance. They don't care that their own wives and children are being hurt because they're hiding behind them. They just want to kill the Jews. And that's a tough negotiating position to work from.
How big of a, we give aid to Egypt, we give aid to Jordan. Saudi Arabia has come out and said that they're not a fan of this plan either by Donald Trump. But we all know that Trump says these grandiose things and then it settles into something else. But how big of a factor is it that we do give Jordan and Egypt aid? I think I saw it. You tell me if I'm correct here. I read about $1.5 billion each. Is that a big of a deal for them to say, okay, we'll come to the negotiating table and we'll accept a certain number of Palestinians if the Palestinians will even go?
Yeah, I can't put a percentage, but it's significant. If we play hardball with them as far as the aid, it will have an effect on their final decision. Whether they, throw open the gates and, let's send them all over here, that's a little tougher. Would they take some? I think we could probably, negotiate them into doing that based on the financial benefit that they accrue from working as allies with us, not treaty allies, but, friends. It would have an effect. But there's only so much they can do. Both those countries, remember, those are the only two Muslim countries in the Middle East, seemingly, that don't have oil. So they're not rich like the Saudis or the Gulf Arabs. Their financial stuff is a little more tied to us than anybody else there in the Muslim world. So that is a significant factor, but it's not necessarily going to push it 100% over. They're not our clients. They don't do everything we tell them to do. Let's put it that way.
Stephen Bucci is our guest, a military and foreign policy analyst with the Heritage Foundation. Got this headline from NBC News. I'm going to ask you about it after the traffic report at Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So, Stephen Bucci, do you think that the Palestinians would voluntarily leave Gaza as Israel is ordering the military to prepare for this evacuation, whatever you'd call it?
I mean, some of them would, depending on where you wanted to send them and, what the deal was. Others would not, if you told them, okay, we're going to give you the country of Jordan, a lot of them wouldn't want to go. They are convinced that by staying in Gaza and fighting the Israelis from there, that is their call from God to do. So, no, some of them are not going to accept any kind of deal, no matter how sweet it is. I think others would, and then you're going to have the problem, how do you keep the hardcore ones from, beating up on the ones who are willing to go because they see that as weakening their position. So it's going to be a tough population control exercise if that starts to happen, whether it's in part or in whole. It's going to be very, very difficult. There are folks who are fanatic about their positions here, and it's something that's difficult for Americans to understand. We are not as tied to land as most other populations in the world. That's an artifact of us being such a new country, relative to others around the world. For us, if the government comes in and takes, the front half of your lawn because it needs to widen the road and gives you some mild compensation, you're ticked. You like your lawn the way it was, but you know what? You're probably going to deal with it and get over it. Or if you're really bothered by it, okay, you move to the next town. That's not the way people in other parts of the world, certainly not in the Middle East, think. They are really, really tied to whatever land they're living on. And if they can tie it back a couple of generations, then it's just that much more so. To a degree that most Americans look at it and think that's, just doesn't make any sense at all. But to them, it makes all the sense in the world. So there's going to be a lot of tough negotiations that go on, frankly, even within America. I mean, there's a lot of people that voted for President Trump who don't want us spending money in other countries or definitely not sending people to other countries. Rand Paul he's not happy with this announcement. No. He thinks this is just, wild foreign entanglements and expenditures, and we got too many people here to take care of to do that sort of thing. Now, we're going to accrue a whole bunch of extra capital here once we close down USAID and all the nutty things they've been spending money on, but it's not going to touch the amount of money an operation like we're contemplating here would cost, even if we do it by helping other people to do the actual work. It's still going to cost us a bunch of money. Well,
Stephen, let me ask you real quick. I've only got 30 seconds, but let's just say that this actually happened and they were able to somehow develop the Gaza Strip, and you've got hotels and casinos. But if Hamas is still, or radical Islamic terrorism is still in the region, then those hotels and the people that visit them are not going to be safe.
No, they're going to be targets. You're absolutely right. It's what President Trump outlined in his initial thing is a really, really difficult thing to achieve and just as difficult to maintain. So I'm with the press secretary. I think we're going to see something short of that, hopefully with lots more people than America involved in it.
All right. Always great analysis and perspective. Stephen Bucci from the Heritage Foundation. Thank you very much.